Good morning. My name is Kristen Vallandi. I am the newest member here of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, taking the place of my colleague Alberto Sandoval from UC Irvine. We are very proud to be members here as the second largest employer in the region with 33,000 employees and an $8.2 billion impact on the region. We are growing. With that, let me turn it over to our leader, Executive Director and CEO, Steve Rosansky.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you. Great to be here today. Beautiful Newport Beach morning. She said, I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. I feel a little off center here. Usually we're in the middle. I don't know how that happened, but in any event, why don't everybody walk, move over. No, just kidding. Move over to this side, then we'll be good. As usual, when we start off this meeting, I'd like to introduce some of the dignitaries that joined us this morning. So we have Councilwoman Robin Grant with us, here somewhere. She snuck, she's back there. I thought she snuck out. Also with us is Planning Commissioner John Langford, right there. With the Civil Service Board, Howard Herzog, back there. Paul Watkins with the Library Foundation. Are we still raising money, Paul? Where is he? Where'd he go? Did he leave? Oh, did you reach your goal yet? December 9th? Yeah, we're having a big ribbon cutting on the new Whitty Hall here. Yeah, December 9th. Cut the ribbon on December 9th. Okay, great. I think that's it for dignitaries. So we do have a sponsor this morning. So I'll bring up Carrie with Rogue Aviation real quick and say a few words about what they do. They're over there at John Wayne Airport. If you've ever had an urge to fly in a helicopter, she can scratch that itch for you, for sure. So come on up, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Steve. This is it's always a pleasure to be here for the Wake Up Newport events and to be a sponsor. Also wanted to mention we were lucky enough to have Annette with the Chamber and Ryan actually join us on a tour within the last 6 months, and it was just phenomenal for them to actually see what we do and see the backyard here from the sky. So as Steve said, I'm with Rogue Aviation. We not only provide helicopter tours, but we also provide flight training. Our owner and chief pilot is Robinson's safety instructor, so he is really the best of the best, and that trickles down to all of our certified flying instructors. We're based out of both John Wayne and Long Beach. So again, training, tours, various services can be provided both here in Orange County and in Long Beach. I also want to say it's just a pleasure to be here for an event with law enforcement, so thank you for that. We have also had a number of law enforcement join us for pilot training. We actually just last week had a CHP officer join us because he wants to do air ops for CHP. So that's always a wonderful connection. Aside from tours and training, I do want to mention that we do other services as well. So photo flights and cinematography flights. So if your business need footage from the air, you can reach out to us and we can arrange that for you. I'm in the process of doing that for both Orange County and Long Beach right now. So if you have any questions, please feel free to stop by the table back there. I also have these orange cards that gives 15% off for any tour for chamber members. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. They've been trying to get me to go up in one of the helicopter rides, so I'm working my way up to it. As soon as I get past this big event that's sold out, I'll have a little bit of free time. In any event, that's all I have for right now, so I'm going to turn it back over to Kristen, and she's going to introduce our guest this morning. So, Kristen.
And with that, I have the privilege of introducing the man who really needs no introduction in our region. So grateful to have him here in this role, focused on keeping both our residents and our businesses safe, and always willing to consider new ideas with a consideration also of criminal rehabilitation. So delighted I've been to see him in action, willingness to take his expertise and his leadership, not only of our region, but to the state and the nation. Thank you for being here this morning. Look forward to hearing you. Please, let's all welcome our Sheriff, Don Barnes.
I actually really appreciate that introduction, because sometimes people read my bio and it's very awkward and embarrassing. Thanks for having me again. I think this is my third or fourth time at Wake Up Newport to talk about things happening not only throughout the county but also the nation that we are dealing with. Some of them which probably surprise you, but I will tell you the hard thing for me when I speak, because of the profession that I'm in, is we deal with people in crisis on their worst days, and it can be very, very negative. And I will tell you that I want to make this as positive as possible, and I have some success in some of the information I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to try to put a smile on your face maybe a little bit, because all the things that are happening nationally, we're doing quite well here in Orange County. I do want to thank my partners also in Newport Beach Police Department. You guys have an incredible police department here in the city. And I know Jeff Boyles was here, your fire chief. I have to tell you that he is in a lot of trouble. Last week, he committed numerous felonies, assault on a peace officer at the RV Derby that we were in together at the fair. He took first place, and he did a great job. And we have a great, just the profession that we're in, we have an incredible bond between fire and law here in the county that's like none other, really none other in the state. Nobody does it quite like us. So, in the introduction, real quick, for those who haven't heard or know about the Sheriff's Department, a large organization, one of the largest sheriff's offices in the nation. We have about 3.1 million people in Orange County. We are the police department, if you will, for about 840,000 residents in the county, 13 contract cities, unincorporated area. And then we have county-wide responsibilities through the jails, the courts, Newport Harbor, Sunset, Dana Point, the 43 miles of coastline that is Orange County is ours. 4 SWAT teams to the helicopters, as we have helicopters. We have an Air Force. We literally have a dog and pony show. We have canines and horses mounting units. So we do everything in the department. I'm blessed to have such great people who we get to work with. So I have about 20 minutes with you, 25 minutes, and then I'm going to open up for Q&A. So you have questions, we can maybe hold those till the end. Hopefully I cover some of the things that you might want to talk about in my brief discussion here today on really 3 topics that I want to cover that is probably different from the last time I'm here. I want to talk about Prop 36 recently passed last year and what is happening with that, not only in the county, but probably more importantly, what's not happening in the state in response to 7 out of 10 people in the state that voted to have change in California and what's not happening through the governor's office and his budget. I'm going to talk about a little bit Homeland Security issues that we're dealing with here in the county. And I know immigration is the top of everybody's mind right now, what's happening throughout the nation. And as we shift from one policy to another, really an extreme position between no immigration to very stern immigration enforcement, how it's impacting our community. And I want to give you an update on fentanyl. I know I've spoke to you before, and it's always something I mention, and maybe that might. We've done really, really well on fentanyl in Orange County, really better than the rest of the state, and probably most of the nation. Prop 36 passed last year was a response to Prop 47 passed in 2014, just over a decade ago. And if you don't know what Prop 47 was, Prop 47 was the largest decriminalization effort passed in California by the voters, really duped by the voters. Voters were duped into passing this because the ballot title on Prop 47 was the Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act. It did nothing to make schools or neighborhoods safer. It actually made us all less safe as a response. And what it did was took the 2 largest categories of crime that any policing profession works with, property crime and narcotics or drug-related crime, and decriminalized those from felonies to misdemeanors, most of those crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. And what that did, if you don't know how the criminal justice system works, hopefully you don't, because it's not a good day, you can't go to prison on a misdemeanor. You can go to prison on a felony. In fact, most misdemeanors, in fact, most of the drug-related felonies under Prop 47 were actually housed in my jail. 80% of the people who got sentenced on a felony for a drug crime served that sentence in county jail, not in state prison. In fact, you had to try really, really hard prior to Prop 47 to come to jail on a drug-related crime. We had the PC 1000, the original Prop 36 that dealt with drug offenses, drug court. There are a lot of off-ramping opportunities to get people entice them into treatment and sobriety. With Prop 47, all those incentives were removed, which is why we saw some of the public manifestation in our communities where people were becoming more prolific users. And then on top of that, you have fentanyl, the fentanyl crisis that came and started in 15 through the last decade. So Prop 36 was the response to that, and I sponsored a lot of legislation. I advocated very heavy throughout the state on Prop 36, and I think the way that proposition was written was the most tempered language in law to not swing that pendulum violently from left to right, which we see happen a lot of times. It's the pendulum for the first time swung to the middle and stopped. And what I mean by that is we're going to restore some accountability in the law. If you commit these violations, you have a likelihood you may be held accountable. You may be sentenced to state prison, but most importantly, you have the opportunity to get treatment and services to get you into sobriety, which is like the old Prop 36, the original, or drug court, or PC 1000. It's called a court-mandated felony. And so if you are now in possession of a narcotic that was under Prop 47, a misdemeanor, meaning if I caught you with a narcotic, a drug that you used to go to prison for, like cocaine, meth, heroin, we write you a ticket and say, please show up in court in 30 days, and they wouldn't show up. And over time, it just didn't work. And it was based on the premise that people will naturally, on their own, find their way to treatment when they're ready, because everybody knows that they want to be sober. And that's just not how people work, and that's not how addiction works. And we have people here that are in that business of addiction. In fact, I will tell you that I'm on my 37th year. I've worked in this space with people who make poor life choices and find themselves on the wrong path. If you ask every one of these addicts, if they're honest, over time, they will tell you, I'm not trying to get high anymore, I'm trying to get back to normal. They throw their body, their homeostasis so out of whack, where their synapses aren't working anymore, they're not producing natural endorphins, they replace that with chemicals, and over time, they're just trying to find normal. They're trying to ease the pain of the addiction by trying to find some way back to normal. It's hard, and addiction is very, very difficult. So all that to say, we restored Prop 36, and we in the county started a task force, not a task force that are going and arresting people, a task force to look at the data. Because countywide, we have to collect the data. If we're going to tell the story of the impacts of Prop 36, we have to have accurate data collection and tell the story with a united voice of what the impacts are. And we're driving that not only here, but also throughout the state. To date, in the first 7 months, from December 18th, that's when Prop 36 went into effect, halfway through December, we have had 5,500 arrests for specific Prop 36 related crimes. What I mean by that, if you committed a robbery and you had a Proposition 36 crime, that robbery would have brought you to jail anyway. So we have controlled for those violations. These are just individual Prop 36 related crimes. The Sheriff's Department, I mentioned before, a large agency, we're responsible for about 21% of the total arrests. What concerns me most about Prop 36, keep in mind, it passed in every county, even the most blue counties passed it. In fact, I think there were only three Assembly and Senate districts where it didn't pass, and that you could guess where those might be by majority. But 7 out of 10 people, residents, voters in the state said, we have had enough, we want change, and we want to incorporate back in some accountability. In the governor's recent budget, he didn't apply or put any money into Prop 36. So there's no money for the programmatic parts of Prop 36, but there's this expectation of the public that we get in and solve this problem. And it's going to be very difficult without the funding for programs. I was having a conversation, Nora, I think we're having a conversation about our jails, and this is the sad part of where we are. I'm proud of this, but it's a sad reflection of how government works. You heard me say this before, I run the largest mental health facility in Orange County. I run the largest detox step-down unit in Orange County. I run the largest drug treatment center in Orange County. It's called the Orange County Jail. Over half of the people, notice I said people, not inmates, people entrusted to our care have a daily nexus to mental health treatment. My population is about 4,100 today, so over 2,000 people a day have a daily nexus to some form of mental health treatment. That could be medication, therapy, all the way up to somebody's SPMI, severely or persistently mentally ill. Those are the people you see talking to mailboxes in the public space, and they come to me not because they're mentally ill, because they committed some violation of law that brought them to me, and I have an obligation to treat them. Several years ago, we were talking, as we started moving into the space, I made a comment, and I said, if we're gonna be a mental health hospital, we're gonna be the best damn mental health hospital in Orange County. Not by design, but by default. I have 200 people a day on medically supervised step-down units for detox. I have over 1,000 people a day on medication-assisted treatment for opioid use disorder every day. That's millions of dollars of investment into people to get them back in a good place. Notice I said investment, not costs. For those in the government space, it drives me crazy when we talk about budgets of revenue that you have, tax revenue, grant revenue, and then you have costs, expenses. This is an investment. This is an investment to get people back on their feet, back in a good place, hopefully to break the cycle of incarceration where they don't come back by treating them well. The problem I have is we don't have upstream and downstream services to connect these people to, which is what Prop 36 funding is intended to do. So in essence, all the issues we're facing in community that we now have an opportunity to change, to pivot, to shift. And it's sad to say this, that the sheriff, the big bad sheriff in Orange County, is way ahead of the curve trying to plan ahead and provide this, and the governor's office didn't put one nickel in to fund either upstream services. What I mean by that is services where we can get people into sobriety, into mental health stability before they even have a law enforcement contact. My partners in Newport Beach, the officers here, my deputies, before they decline and we get called to a 911 or some other service, there's some way to treat them in community before they decline, which means they never enter the criminal justice system, which can have catastrophic effects on them, on employment, on families, on income. It's preventing all these other harms by getting people into these programmatic solutions that have to be funded upstream. I shared a story, I'm going to repeat it, and I can't remember, I know I shared the story. About 2 years ago, Ray, by the way, handles all my government affairs and legislation. We work, he's my right arm. I called my left arm once, he got offended, he's my right arm. But we were talking to 2 congressional offices a few years ago, coming out of George Floyd, all the police reform initiatives are coming out of Congress. And these 2 congressional officers were talking about how they're going to help solve the problem of police use of force, at the application of force. And they're talking about how they're going to legislate around this and have accountability on police and all these other things. And when they're through speaking, I looked at them and I said, what if I told you that I could reduce the application of force, use of force in my organization, which I think would hold true in Newport Beach also, because I think the data is consistent. If I told you that right now, I could reduce use of force by 50%. That's 1 in 2 applications of force don't happen, a 50% reduction. That's a pretty profound statement. And I looked at them and said, get me out of social work. Half the applications of force we have in my organization is somebody in mental health crisis, oftentimes not even a law violation related, or somebody who's under the influence of something that's making the act weird, where we have to go out, intervene, try to maintain peace, that ends up in some encounter where we have to apply force to control that individual. If we deal with that upstream, and by the way, these encounters come with a lot of liability, oftentimes result in litigation that costs taxpayers millions of dollars. Talk about it may fund itself. These programs may fund itself just in the deterrence of dealing with them upstream, so they never decline, we never this encounter, we have a bad thing, we never get sued. It's really a model we have to invest in upstream to make these changes happen, which I think is probably the right way we need to go. I have been advocating for that now for years. I think we're finally getting traction, but this all starts with, again, an investment. We have to have the governor's office say, these are the programs, this is where we're going to spend our money to stop this issue, else we just keep on, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different results, and we are going to probably struggle with that. Let me talk a little about some of our national homeland security issues. There's been a border crisis, if you haven't noticed. The last administration, this is not picking on an administration. I'm not saying one side's better than the other. I think both have had some bad policy that has been used. I can cover a little bit about that, my concerns and some of that. This is where we are now, though, nationally. First of all, let me tell you that I am involved. I have been, I'm on several national intelligence committees with DHS, FBI. I represent the county on some of these. I've testified in Congress and the Senate on issues that are homeland security related. I'm very concerned of where we are in our nation right now. You can't have national security without a border. You have to control who comes into this country. Big advocate for immigration legally. Legal immigration. Nobody allows more people in their country than the United States does every year, than any other country on earth, through a legal process. But when you have 1.4 million people over a 2-year period, 2 federal fiscal years, that are gotaways, meaning they, in between the ports of entry, made their way successfully into the country, and we have no idea who these people are, what their intentions are, what they want to do. And I'm not saying all of them are bad people. Many of them may just want to come and chase the American dream, whatever that might be for them. But I also know that during that one year, 157 of these people who were encountered at the border were on the FBI's terror watch list. So you can assume that some of that 1.4 million people might be people who have nefarious intent and want to do us harm. And that's those who are most concerning to me. But border crossings are down significantly over the last year, or since January, I should say, by nearly 93% reduction in attempted border crossings over that period. And what that means, just last year, the number of attempted border crossings is way below 10,000, way below 10,000 for the month. And those in between the ports of entry trying to sneak in encounters are way down as well. So we've restored a semblance of security of the border. And what that means is not just keeping people who want to come in from coming in. That's a profound deterrent on fentanyl trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking, crises that are created at the border. That gets changed also. Unfortunately, as I predicted, maritime trafficking was going to pick back up. The Ponga boats and the pleasure crafts coming up. Our western border, because we'd have a western border called the Pacific Ocean. If you didn't know that, we patrol that on behalf of the federal government, Operation Stone Garden. If you've ever been down the harbor, you see those gray boats that have the holes. I call them the Go Fast boats. The federal government bought those for us, and we go out and we patrol with the Coast Guard, but Coast Guard goes way out into the ocean. We have the 5 miles out, 43 miles of the coast, and we patrol that on behalf of our nation. We have had numerous encounters along the way. You don't hear about all these. I think that's kind of, unfortunately, that you don't hear about those. But during that same period, we've had, in the last several years, 341 missions. We went out specifically looking for nefarious actors. 112 of those resulted in a smuggling operation that we interdicted and deterred. So about 1 in 3 times we go out, we find somebody who are trying to either smuggle in narcotics, smuggle in people, and we intervene. We work with, obviously, Newport Beach and other agencies along our coastline. If there is some type of landing, we had one recently in the harbor. You may have heard about that. We caught them and returned them to the U.S. Coast Guard, who came in and took possession of them. One of the most difficult things on immigration that I'm still dealing with is SB 54, passed in 2018. If you don't remember what SB 54, it's the Trust and the Truth Act. It prevents me from communicating with ICE on people who are here who have on immigration status issues. I can't deploy resources specific to ICE. By the way, we never did that. I can say this without any reservation. Part of the legislation passed by Kevin De Leon when he was in the Senate was this will prevent law enforcement from ever doing ICE, immigration enforcement. We never did immigration enforcement. It was a solution to a problem that didn't exist. What it also did was preventing or prohibiting me from turning people in my custody at my jail over to ICE unless they met a very high threshold. By the way, the original language was anybody, and that wouldn't be signed by Governor Brown. They went back and said they changed it to serious offenses. So now if somebody comes into my jail, and by the way, I don't notice them and say this person's legal or illegal, because we can't ask their status, but we do have a system called AFIS, the Automated fingerprint identification system. So when their fingerprints are run and they go up through the California law enforcement telecommunications system and then over to FBI, those fingerprints are run. If somebody in my care, in my custody, is an illegal immigrant who's been deported before, our federal partners are notified, ICE, ERO, removal operations, they notify me and say, sorry, Ray, today you're an illegal immigrant. And they say, Ray is in your care, is in your custody, and we're putting a hold on him. And before, when we used to track the data, it was about 1 in 10 people in my custody were somebody not an American citizen that was here either illegally, but at least not an American citizen. And so they put a hold. You think that they want all 1 in 10. That's not how it works. They didn't put a hold on everybody. They put a hold on some of them. Then once we receive that, our deputies will look at that and they'll review it to find out if it meets the threshold of Senate Bill 54. Some do, some don't. About 40% or so will. So if I get 100 holds, about 40% of them, these are numbers that are arbitrary, will meet the threshold of SB 54, meaning I can turn those people over in a custodial environment. When their time is done here in Orange County, I can take Ray and give him over to ICE if they come to pick him up. They don't always come to pick him up. They may pick up, 1 year they only picked up 9. So when I don't pick them up, I can't hold them indefinitely. It's called an over-detention. It's actually illegal. I have to release them back into the public space. And that bothers me. And what I've been advocating for are several things. I don't like SB 54. These are criminals. These aren't people here who have been raided like the car washes that are people just drying cars. These are people who have committed serious offenses. They're incarcerated in my jail. And I have a problem returning these people back into the community, oftentimes the community in which they preyed upon and committed their crimes, and let them reviolate and keep coming back. There's a problem with that. If there's one thing we should do on an immigration front is rescind the portion of SB 54 that prohibits me from turning over criminals in a custodial environment so that they can take them and process them. In 2017 and 18, when this was passed, I said back then, this is going to be a problem within our community. If ICE cannot pick these people up from me in the controlled environment of my jail, they will be returned to the community. ICE will go out looking for them. Does sound familiar? In the last 90 days, ICE will go out looking for them, and when they do, they'll take other people with them out of proximity, and that will be a problem. And I'm not advocating for the people who are here that aren't committing other crimes other than being here illegally. I'm just saying that we should focus our efforts, our resources on those who are the most prolific offenders, who you get the best return on that investment taxpayer dollar to go get the very serious people. And more importantly, where I think they should focus, our federal partners, are the people who got in this country who might have nefarious intent. Go find them, who have connections to ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other terror and very extreme groups. That's where we should put in our effort first, and I do believe that. There's a quota right now that they need to have 3,000 people a day is the number. Go get 3,000 immigrants a day. And that's their mission, and I'm not being critical of their mission. But I think we should focus on 30 or 40 people a day that gets the best safety return of people who have the most likely opportunity to commit very serious crime. So we are working our way through that. I think that it's been very difficult. I have some problems in the way that they have been acting in our community. Many times they are driving regular cars, dressed like regular people, and they're jumping out and doing body snatches on the curb. We've had calls of kidnappings. It's just been really difficult on the coordination part of how they're operating. So we're wasting our resources because we don't know when they're here, how they're acting, what they're doing. And we find out 2 or 3 days later, yeah, that was us. We did an operation, and that wasn't a kidnapping. That was somebody we wanted for an immigration issue. So I think the coordination needs to improve significantly. We also have, I know you've dealt with this, South American theft groups, the Chileans coming up from Chile under the last, do you know who started that program? It's the U visa program started under, many years ago, then Vice President Joe Biden. He created a relationship with Chile to let them have a 90-day visa waiver. If you're coming here for business or pleasure, you don't have to go through the normal processes of going to the State Department and getting a visa through our government. The problem is Chile was not doing their half of the job. They weren't vetting them, they weren't making sure that they weren't criminals, and they were getting on planes coming here landing, and wherever they landed, they drop their IDs, come up with a new name, and start raping and pillaging through our communities. I know you've had several here in Newport Beach. We've worked with Newport Beach on some of these cases. We've had them as well. We've caught a lot of them. These are very sophisticated criminal enterprises. They do counter surveillance. They know when they're being picked up by law enforcement. They use technology. They'll put a camera, digital camera, in a tree across the street looking for pattern of life on a home that they've targeted. So they'll know that every Thursday night's date night and you're gone from 6 to 9, they have this time, this window they can go in and just get everything out of your home. They follow people home. They get people forced to the curb and steal from their car. They're very sophisticated groups. I briefed on this about a year and a half ago with Major County Sheriffs of America, and my peers were like, that's an Orange County thing. You guys are dealing with that. And they went home and started looking for MO and pattern and crimes and relationships, and several of the sheriffs called me and said, we got them. We had no idea we have these groups operating within our midst, and they are here. I can tell you that in sheriff's jurisdiction, the areas I patrol, the 13 cities and unincorporated areas, in 2023, over half of the residential burglaries we investigated were South American theft groups, Chileans. This administration, as soon as it changed, I wrote several letters to Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, and Kristi Noem's, Secretary of DHS, asking for them to minimally suspend the visa waiver program with Chile. And they reported back that they solved the problem. Chile is now doing their vetting, and so they believe that that's been solved. The problem I have with that, it may be working now, but if there's an administration change at some point, they may go right back to what they're doing before. I don't think you reward bad behavior by saying, okay, we caught you, do better now. And there's other countries south that we've had criminal relational problems with, like Colombia, who also want to be part of the visa waiver program, that is going to cause problems for us. I just don't think that we should risk on the backs of our citizenry that Chile is going to do it better and follow the rules. Make them do it like everybody else. If you're going to be vetted, we vet you. If you're coming here for less than 90 days for some business or tourism, do it like every other country does, and we won't have those problems anymore, I believe. Last, I want to cover one area. I was recently testified in House Homeland Security on planning major events. We have some big events coming into this country. We have FIFA World Cup. There's 11 venues across the country. We have the Olympics coming in 28. We have several venues here in Orange County that will happen. And one of the areas where we are significantly deficient in technology is what we call CUAS, Counter Unmanned Aerial Systems Program. That's drones. Drones in the airspace, and our ability to detect and mitigate those threats and those risks. And we are way behind the curve. And this is a technology that when we get to the point that we need it because something bad has happened, we're years away from implementation of a solution. And we need to be looking at that right now. For example, the cartels are way ahead of us in counter-UAS. The cartels along the border are using counter-UAS technology, meaning they are taking CBP drones, taking control of them, and grounding them from their missions because they are doing that on the other half of the border from Mexico. Sadly, the cartels are more advanced than we are in their ability to mitigate drones. We saw in January the risk of this when a Canadian super scooper during the Palisades fires collided with the drone, put a 3-inch hole in its wing, and grounded it for 5 days. One of the greatest assets we had for firefighting was grounded for 5 days. And that's not counting the other hundreds of encounters of drones we had during the same incidents. We've had them attempt to drop narcotics inside of our jails. We've had them, you may not know this, and this might frighten you, especially where you are in the flight path, fortunately or unfortunately. A few years ago, we had an individual flying drones within hundreds of feet, sometimes within 100 feet of departing 737s from John Wayne Airport. If you know that flight scope that they take off, the glide path, you take an engine out of a 737 at low altitude, that could have catastrophic impacts. Fortunately, we found him, caught him, and prosecuted him federally for the risk that he's presenting to us. So we are hoping that we can get some of the technology in place now. We do not, the 4 agencies that have counter UAS capabilities is not deep enough to cover all of the 11 FIFA locations over a period of weeks with the 77 events that are going to happen. We can't cover all of the different locations in LA and Orange County where they're going to have events for the Olympics, not to mention all the other training sites and fan fests and things that come with it. It is going to be it's probably the most obvious and legitimate threat we face on a drone or mass drone attack. And that could be either weaponized drones, or they could be weaponized with a biologic or some other chemical compound. It could be very difficult for us, and we're way behind the curve, and we need to fix that problem. I did go back a few weeks ago again in Congress on a different issue, but while I was there at some meetings, I did review a grant opportunity that may be coming out from DHS, and it was on a drone detection grant. We could get the technology to detect drones, and they asked me what I thought, and I said, this is great, but what does it do? What does it do? If I were a constituent reporting to you that, hey, we detected 100 drones last week, but we couldn't do a damn thing about it, that is not where we should be. So I did recommend, if you're going to make this funding available, please give us the opportunity to include mitigation technology with that grant. So in the event that we do get authorized to mitigate drones, meaning you can take control of them from the ground, at least allow us to buy that software now, so that when we get it, the green light comes, you can do that. At least then we're not buying the software twice. This is better use of our taxpayer dollars, in my opinion. Let me end on a positive note. Fentanyl. It sounds funny saying positive. 2015, we had the first presence of fentanyl in west of the Mississippi. Our crime lab detected that. Knowing the trend on how drug trends work, we got in on fentanyl mitigation strategies. I have 6 different narcotics initiatives within the Sheriff's Department, 1 more if you count our drug education program that we have called Above the Influence that we started a few years ago, aimed at 5th and 6th grade students. It's a life choices education program. It's not a scared straight program. For those who remember the scared straight programs from way back when, those don't work. We're still going down the right way. And I think that's a result of many things. Us, Newport Beach, the municipal agencies, the Sheriff's Department, getting way out ahead and educating people of the risks of fentanyl, the presence of fentanyl, how it's being marketed, how it's being distributed, and educated the public. We also have naloxone programs. My agency alone has over 700 lives saved by the deployment of naloxone, that opioid antagonist we put in all of our deputies' cars so they have it. Over the same period of time, I've had 3 deputies inadvertently dosed by fentanyl during the course of their job, where they accidentally aerated some fentanyl powder and ingested it and got dosed by it. It's pretty frightening when you see the video, the body-worn camera video of a deputy who literally goes into this and just falls backwards because they got dosed in some way. We're still seeing fentanyl come across the border. By the way, methamphetamine by volume is still the largest trafficked narcotic. We're seeing cocaine pick back up because of production back now in Colombia. And there's a lot of times there's either intentionally or unintentionally cross-contamination of fentanyl in cocaine or fentanyl in marijuana and other things. So we're seeing the presence in other drugs as well. And one area we're seeing that is in xylazine. Xylazine is an animal tranquilizer. We've seen our crime lab has picked up the presence of xylazine every year, increasing xylazine's presence in fentanyl. And it's what xylazine will do in fentanyl, it will make it resistant to naloxone because of the way that it suppresses the body. So now you have fentanyl, and now you have a way that even with fentanyl or with naloxone, you can't intervene and save lives because xylazine will block the effects of the nasal Narcan. Nitazene is another one that's also like xylazine. We're seeing the presence of nitazene also nationally. It's included, these drug dealers put it in, the manufacturers put it in because it gives a better high, so to speak. And you get these people that are addicts, they're chasing better highs, which is a sad reflection. So the good news is we have turned the corner. When you look at where we are on Homeland Security, we have our own terrorism fusion center in Orange County. I just opened up our real-time operations center last April of 2024. That's looking at crime across the county in a very great way. The presence of that real-time operations center is when they're involved in a case, an incident, as it's unfolding, they're identifying the suspect 50% of the time before the call is even done. One of my favorite stories was we had a carjacking that occurred in San Clemente. A young lady gets somebody violently takes her car from her and leaves. Very traumatic moment in her life, very devastating. We had deputies responding to the scene where she was, and our real-time operations center picked up that car, followed it throughout the community, and we had deputies stop and arrest the individual in Dana Point before we even contacted the victim. So we actually got to where she was. She's in tears. She said, "This has happened." I said, "Yes, we know. We have your car back, and the guy who did it's in handcuffs." What a great outcome and we've had numerous successes like that. To date, we've mapped over 80 schools with cameras. We have preemptive ability to go in and take control of the cameras if something's unfolding. We have use agreements with the major retailers to look in their parking lots when things are happening. We have access to cameras in community. We can follow cars. We have license plate readers. It's going to be the most profound impact on our ability to not only deter crime, but also to interdict and solve crime along the way. So I talked for, I think, a little bit more than 25 minutes. I'm probably getting the hook. Steve's looking at me like, this is not a lunch event. But with that, I'm very proud of the work we do. And I say we, I'm meaning our partners in Newport Beach, us. We look at everything the same way. We have great relationships. And I think for all the right reasons. There's a reason why Orange County is the safest major urban area in the nation because of the work that we do. And more importantly, the support we get from community in doing our job. That makes all the difference for us. So how much time do I have for questions? Do I have time for questions? Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
My name is Jasmine Malini. I'm a retired physician, and what really impressed me about your talk is how you become a hospital, a mental health hospital.
Yes.
I trained during the 1980s when President Reagan was in office, and the ACLU sued and said that if you are a patient in a mental health hospital, you have civil rights and you can leave. So I, as an intern and resident, was at LA County where I trained, and the entire psychiatric hospital was emptied out.
Yes.
So over the years, I've witnessed this crisis in our country where we have no treatment for mental health, for mental illness. We don't consider the brain an organ that can get sick and that can get sick permanently. So as a result of that, we have homelessness, drug addiction, and crime. The source of all these three issues is mental illness. And we hear our governor and sometimes officials in the federal government say, well, you know, community clinics and community follow-up. There are patients who must be institutionalized for life. And one of the major problems that these severely mentally ill folks have is they don't take their meds.
Yes.
So as an intern and resident, my job was to simply say, Mr. Smith, you got to take your meds. It wasn't anything fancy. So how do we address that as a county, a state? You know, I, as a single person, I can't do anything about it.
I don't know. I seem like a pretty Wonder Woman-like personality.
I don't know. What can we do?
I think that's a great question. And so going back to my previous points, and this is going to sound odd because I am by default the P word. I'm a politician. I'm elected to office. But you have to put pressure on the legislature and local politicians, our representatives, to force them to advocate to solving this problem. That means it's difficult. It is. That's taxpayer dollars investing in these different areas. But if you look at what you're talking about, and let's just talk about mental illness real quick, because I've been in this arena also for a long time. It is a very difficult illness to work with. We had a grant that I wrote back when I was a few years, well, more than a few years ago. It's called the Mentally Ill Offender Crime Reduction Grant. And what it gave us $1.5 million that we didn't benefit from the Sheriff's Department. It was in community, post-custody, transitional care to keep people on their medication when they left the jail. So it's funding this medication program. And if you don't know how, if you ever dealt with mental illness, and there are great medications to get people into mental health stability, the illness goes like this. I take these drugs, I get stable, I feel better, guess what, I'm okay, I don't need my drugs, I stop taking them, and this cycle just repeats itself. So that incentive or oversight of keeping people medicated appropriately is really the deal maker on how we solve this problem long term, but that takes an investment. Your comment about where you were in the 80s, and this is what I'm most proud of, and you may or may not have read our article. Last year, the National Institute of Corrections, which is a subsidiary of the Department of Justice, awarded us, the Sheriff's Department, a center of innovation for our jails and all the programs we have there, all the strategies we have there, dealing with the mental illness, the drug addiction, everything we do. By the way, there's 3,088 sheriffs nationally. There's only one other sheriff that's ever received that recognition. This is not something they hand out. I say that, and I didn't do that. My team, I'm blessed to have great people. They did that. We started looking at these issues differently. These are people. These are names, not numbers. These are opportunities to intervene. There's all, if you heard me speak, I don't say law enforcement anymore. This is the profession of policing. Law enforcement is a very, very small fraction of what we do every day, enforcing the law. Most of what we do are the 3 tenets of policing: preventing crime, apprehending criminals, and order maintenance. That's the 3 prongs of that stool that we are mandated to do. The law, the expectation of the public has changed on us, mostly because of other failures of government where these things weren't being addressed, and the responsibility trickled down and landed on the shoulders of law enforcement, because people started looking at us as the face of solving these problems. It's an unfair responsibility. We need, quite honestly, we need to get out of that. We need to put people in place who are the professionals dealing with these issues, not us. The first person somebody sees in crisis should not be somebody wearing a uniform, a gun, and a badge. It should not. It has to be, we should only get involved under very extreme circumstances where life is at risk or some other issue. And I know that Newport Beach is going to deal with this. We're looking at policy changes now because of the way the courts are litigating these cases, or we're getting, our deputies are having, not our deputies, but law enforcement officers, deputies across the country and the nation are having qualified immunity removed, meaning they can be sued civilly and be held accountable civilly because they tried to do the right thing and it ended poorly. I went back to those 50% of our interventions. So we're actually going to stop going to some of these calls. It's going to be very difficult for the public when they call and say, I have a conservatorship on my adult child, you have to take them into your custody and you need to take them somewhere. And we say, no, call a private ambulance service. We're not doing this anymore, because we assume all of the risk in that encounter, and it's not our mandate. This lady in the back, yes, ma'am.
Just one quick question on recruitment and retention. I'm just curious what it's like currently, at the Sheriff's Department. Is it full? Are there spots? And also, how is that being met? Is it being met by local academic institutions, or, how do you fill those spots?
So the question was on recruitment and retention, and I hate this question because we are 50 deputies over. I am doing great on recruiting, getting people in. If you run a business, getting the right person is half of the long-term battle. Retaining them over a career wins the game. That wins the race. So not only are we doing great on recruitment, we're doing even better on retention, where we're getting people and they stay long. The only reason people are leaving my organization today is not because they don't want to work for us, it's because they can't afford housing here. I can't afford to live here. I can go to Idaho and take my family and buy a home, where I can't afford that starter home now in Orange County at $1.7 million. It's keeping them out of this market. And most of the deputies working for me aren't even Orange County residents. They're from the Inland Empire or some other location proximate where they can afford to live. That's becoming even more unaffordable now, but we're doing really, really well. Yes, ma'am.
So, remember a few months ago, in the spring, there was all this report of drones, extra drone lights, especially they talked about it on the East Coast. I live in Newport Shores, and we have these skylights, or sky windows, and it seemed like there was 3 drones that were up
You don't. This goes back to first of all, there are, the way that this is being, I'm speaking for other forms of government, this is being viewed as a First Amendment right. Your privacy is not as important as the ability for somebody to fly these drones. And there are people that are in illegal space. There's certain places you can't be with the drone. There's some things you can and can't do with a drone based on case law. For example, if I can be in your neighbor's second floor window and I can see into your backyard, you do not have a protection there because I can see it with a plain eye somewhere. If you're in a different area or curtilage, all these other legal issues, it changes over time. And that's where, so they have more ability to fly drones. We have a very strict drone, I have a drone program. We have over 40 drones that we deploy, but it's very strict use of that drone. Under certain conditions, where they can go, where they can't go, we use them for situational awareness. We call it overwatch if we have a tactical environment or something. At the UCI protest, for example, we responded to that. We had drones up looking at the activities of the protesters, so we had situational awareness of where they were moving, what they were doing next. That's one area where we deploy drones. The problem that we have with drones, and I was talking to, again, members of Congress recently. I said the issue that I see is that you're looking at drones as a private person's right to fly a drone. I said you have to look at that differently. You have to look at the airspace now as an extension of our highway system. It's just gone vertical. If you change that mindset, we have laws that local law enforcement enforces on our highways, our interstate highways and our highways. You do something illegal, we can do something, we can deter you through a citation or whatever it might be. You have to look at the space, the airspace the same way. It's just an extension of our highway system. It's just gone vertical. We have to start controlling that with the enforcement of laws, where you can be, where you can't be, right? And start looking at that differently. But it's a mindset, because that's become the new frontier. The new frontier has gone vertical into this airspace. If we don't start appropriately controlling it, we're going to lose control of it and play defense and trying to catch up with it. Yes, sir.
You guys working with Anduril Industries?
Yes, we are working with Anduril, but they are mostly doing military-grade drones. I've talked to Palmer several times. He wants to work with us, but his mind is focused on competing with Raytheon and others in defense systems. So what he's producing for an aerial system is way outside our budget. We're going to be more in the probably under $50,000 range. I'm going to do the last two real quick. You and then back.
My
Yes.
name's Julie Rudash. I'm the founder and CEO of Team Kids. I just wanted to thank you. I've had a chance to partner with your deputies and SROs and our schools doing prevention work. And I know we talk about crime and politics and just the work that you guys make in the schools. And so my question is, I don't think we're ever going to, well, I hope we can really reduce how much drugs are available, right? Because it's profitable and it's hard to cut down. But the one thing we can do is really impact the demands in our next generation, right? So what can we as communities, businesses?
Well, so the question is, how do we deal with, going forward, how we deal with the demand impacts of narcotics?
The demand is the supply is too profitable.
Well, that's the issue. It makes I almost sound like I spend all my time in D.C., and I do spend some time there, but I was meeting with White House staff on Office of National Drug Control Policy about a year and a half, maybe so ago, and it's on fentanyl. I was talking to Dr. Gupta, who's the drug czar, and his staff. I was there for 4 hours. I was one of only 3 people invited to speak on the topic of fentanyl nationally. And I won't go through everything because it was a classified briefing, but it was all these different iterations of the issue. It's like, it's not just one thing, it's a lot. When we finished, the individual I was speaking to said, "Sheriff, thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming out. We know what we need to do. We need to do this one thing. We do this one thing." And I said, "You didn't hear me. It's not that one thing. It's that one thing and 11 other things simultaneously that you have." I went through all of the issues of the precursor chemicals, transiting these through U.S. ports. The cartels' control of their harbors, the pill presses being sold into Mexico where the cartels are used, all these things. And I ended with kind of what you got to was, and all that is important, but until we deal with the addiction issue north of the Mexican border in this country, there's a narcotics economy. It's supply and demand. As long as there's a demand for these narcotics in the United States, the cartels will rise up to meet that demand. Somebody will always be there to produce the pill, to traffic the fentanyl, to get the cocaine, whatever it is. We have an addiction issue in this country, and we have to get our people in a better place by investing appropriately to get them into sobriety. The trick is to get, the more people we get into sobriety long term, the less demand there is on narcotics, the less trafficking that happens. All these things are really interconnected in this big giant system. We can't do one thing. That's playing whack-a-mole. Every time we do one thing, the cartels pivot. If you didn't know this, which we closed down the border, you know what the cartels are doing now? They're using the Canadian border. They're doing an end around up to Canada, and they're bringing them through the north. So we are getting outmaneuvered, outplayed by the cartels. They're a Fortune 100 company. They're Amazon. They operate not like the old 80s cartels. They are very sophisticated in their enterprise, and they're not going to walk away from their multi-billion-dollar enterprise of drug dealing just because we want them to. It's going to be our opportunity to intervene and change how we act, which will then they'll try to react to. But if we can deal with the addiction, we'll be way done. Robin, last question.
Well, first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much, as always, for coming here to Newport Beach. You inspire or instill so much confidence in us. Your message is very daunting in some ways, but also there's a lot of confidence I'm sure everybody in this room feels from your mastery, your consistency, and your mastery of all of
Thank
the
you.
issues. And you say it's not one, it's 11 things. We all need to work together. It's really an honor having you here in our city, and I'm sure everybody here is grateful, and we're grateful that you would come to the state of the county. So thank you, first of all.
Thank you.
Second one, I wanted to mention, just going back to the drones, that we here in Newport Beach are also investing. I'm sure you know that we've invested in a system of drones that is being implemented now. The police knows more about them than necessarily I would share, but we will be drone savvy very shortly. We purchased 5 American-made drones and 6 drones, 5 that will be nested around our city, and similarly will be for reconnaissance around activity that happens in our city to add to our public safety. We here in Newport take public safety so seriously. We acknowledge exactly what you're saying. There is nothing else in our city if we don't have public safety. We don't have quality of life. We don't have good traffic. There's nothing that occurs without our public safety. We're so grateful to our wonderful Newport Beach Police Department, but also your men that are here in our city, on our harbor. It's very, very meaningful and impactful that we have such a great team in place, and so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate that. And of course, with the harbor, it's a partnership. It isn't us just doing this independently. And I have instilled, and I hope that you see this if you're down the harbor, I've instilled in a very intentional message with our staff that they are to do their job with a smile on their face. They are oftentimes in a non-enforcement posture. So if you're on one of the beaches, you're going to get sprayed probably by the fire hose when you're out there on a hot day. And I love the partnership that we have, and it is a partnership. We do it very, very well. Thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Don. Let me just wrap it up here real quick. Thank you, Don, for speaking today. I mean, a lot of great information, a lot of great insights into policing and crime. I'll just mention that, following up on the Chilean gang thing, I think last week, wasn't a gentleman arrested, part of a Chilean gang in Newport Beach? Well, he was arrested in Newport Beach for blowing up like ATMs across the state like that. That's what they did. They literally blew them up to access them. So they're here too in Newport Beach. A few events that we've got coming up. Our State of the County, which you see says sold out. Actually, we had a few seats turned back from our sponsors. So if someone's interested in coming, call the office. We still have a few tickets left. Our next event after that is our Inspire Voices with Vision at the Pacific Club. It's a high tea event. I think we might have 1 or 2 seats left over. I think we have 60 limit, but I think we're almost sold out on that.
No, 80.
Oh, 80 now? Okay, 80. So maybe a few more. Oh, vendor tables. Okay. Our next luncheon is at Fleming's. That's next week on the 20th. And our Sunset Mixer this month is going to be at the Bayview Marriott, which they have a great lawn there, overlooks the Upper Bay. So we'll be there for that. And then next month, our Wake Up Newport is Deborah Levy. I think she's head of the Alzheimer's Association here in Orange County. So that should be interesting as well. Thank you all for coming. All these events are on our website. If you're not a member of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce, you should be. Take care.